Hello, it's Ryan from 2MinuteTennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to compare the forehands of Novak Djokovic. Hello, it's Ryan from 2MinuteTennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to compare the forehands of Novak Djokovic. First thing is their grip. They are both using a semi-Western grip. Let me show you what that looks like. All you have to do is put the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad on panel number 4 as a right-hander. That's right there. So you take the base knuckle and the heel pad and put it on panel number 4. Remember, this is panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, and so on. If you're a lefty, then you put the same two spots. Your panel number 1 is the same. And if you're a lefty, this is panel 2, panel 3, and this is your panel 4. So if you're left-handed, obviously this is my right hand here. I'm just going to leave that there. But if you are left-handed, you take the same two spots, but you put them on this bevel. This is a great bevel to use for both power and spin. Now, I've synchronized these forehands, and they're actually hitting on the same court at Indian Wells on the practice court. But I've synchronized these forehands so they're hitting the ball at the exact same time. So the first thing is the turn. So we'll see that Djokovic's turn is higher, and I'll say right off the bat that I'm a fan of Djokovic's forehand more than I am Sinner's forehand. So let's look at them individually here. So you'll look at Djokovic's turn. He has his hitting hand the same height as his shoulder. Well, when Sinner turns, he turns a little lower. So Sinner is actually going to be using a slightly different power source, or the percentage of where he gets his power is going to be coming, a higher percentage is going to be coming from a different source, and I'll show you that in a second. But you can see that Djokovic is turning higher. I'm a fan of when the hand is shoulder level. And the reason is because you get to use more gravity-assisted racket speed. When you watch Sinner go back, he uses very much of that lag that you see with Federer. Now, when he turns and he turns lower, he has the tip of his racket pointing off to the right. Now, this is what you see with, Shapo, and you see this with Kyrgios, you see this with Jack Sock. With Federer. I did a forehand with Alcaraz and Federer, so I just said Federer, but I did a comparison of them too. But when Djokovic drops, you can see the tip of his racket is just slightly on the outside of his hand, where the tip of the racket's pointing slightly to the outside. But as it drops, it points more at the camera. I'm a fan of this for recreational players. This type of swing can be hard to manage, especially if you're just having an off day. This is a simpler type swing, and I don't think you can really argue with 20 Grand Slams. He changed his forehand, kind of in the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and man, what a difference Djokovic has made compared to early on in the aughts, 07, 08, 09, even when he won the Australian. And he beat Tsonga. His forehand was completely different and so much bigger. And now he's got this beautiful compact motion that is so easy to duplicate over and over and over again. So when you look at Sinner and he drops the rack, he's got the strings facing straight at the back fence. Different than what Federer does. Federer's got his strings pointing down, much to do with the grip. But that means he has more of a correction in order to get the butt cap pointing at the ball than you see compared to Djokovic. Djokovic has got the same thing. He's got the butt cap, idea pointing at the ball, but it's just because there's less to calculate here and there's less to undo. I just think it makes it easier for him. Return of serve, just if he gets a bad bounce or the ball kind of kicks up on him a little bit, it's so much easier for him to handle that situation. Both of them have a beautiful, what's called inside out swing. You can see they both close their racket face by tilting the strings down. That allows them to hit beautiful topspin with the strings facing forward at contact. But what I mean by inside out is the racket going away from them. So look how the racket tracks away from the body. You want to make sure that you do that. A lot of recreational players, they put the ball way too close to them because they stand too close and they swing across. These guys are swinging out away from them. It's the key to hitting pure topspin as you're striking the ball. Now, here's a really cool thing to check out. I am a big fan of when players have their non-hitting hand essentially waving to the opponent at contact. When you wave to the opponent at contact, with your non-hitting hand around, let's say, chin level. So you can see his hand is around chin level. When you do that, it really makes sure as a recreational player that your hips can turn. A lot of recreational players drop this non-hitting arm and they end up hugging themselves. In a second, I'll show you what this looks like. So I'm going to go in front of the camera and show you what this looks like. You do not want to drop this non-hitting hand. In fact, if I draw a line, I'm going to draw a blue line, kind of like a water line. It's almost like Djokovic is playing tennis kind of in the shallow end of a pool, right? So his racket is going to get wet. His racket is going to go down into the water. But watch his left hand. Watch his left hand stay dry. As his left hand moves, his left hand stays dry. You want to keep your left hand up as you're unwinding. Now you'll notice that Sinner drops his lower kind of into the water, but he does raise it, which is good. Watch his non-hitting hand raise and rise up as he's hitting. Again, that's really important. You might think it's just, that's just anecdotal. No, it's really important for hip turn. If your non-hitting hand drops, it can become a counterweight. And for most recreational players, it does become a counterweight and then doesn't allow for the hip turn to happen. So they both spin up the back of the ball. I think, definitely on this forehand, you'll see more topspin from Sinner just because he dropped his racket down a little below the ball. But look at this finish. Big fan of catching the racket in the left hand, or as a right hander in the left hand. When you finish, you'll see that Jannik, he actually tucks that arm in against his body, and he has kind of what I call a flailing finish, where there's no real end to his finish. Now, what people say is, yeah, but Ryan, if you catch the racket, it stops your swing, and it means that you don't you can't hit as hard, or it slows down your racket. Well, it's long after contact anyway, and it doesn't make you hit any slower. It simply doesn't, and it helps actually to make sure that your left hand is up as you're hitting, and to make sure that it actually that you're swinging up and that you're not swinging across. Let me show you one thing. I'm going to match up their hits, just to show how hard Djokovic is hitting this ball. Because you might think like, oh, Djokovic isn't hitting the ball that hard. He is smoking this ball. And if I'm going to put this video down below, I'm going to put both videos below, but I want you to watch this video against Cilic, who he's hitting with. He is nailing the ball. It's unbelievable how hard they're hitting and how consistent Djokovic is. But I'm going to match up their hits here, and you can see I'm matching them up. I want you to notice that Djokovic, he actually hits this ball harder than Jannik. And this is actually Diego Schwartzman. But again, these videos are matched up. So watch, these videos are matched up, and watch how Cilic actually hits this ball before Diego does. So Djokovic and Cilic are actually hitting this ball faster back and forth than Diego and Sinner. And you can actually see, by the way, look at, this is actually a great view of it. Look at Cilic's left hand going up. Look, see how his left hand's going up? Look at Diego's left hand. I don't know if you can see this because they're pretty small in the background there. But look how both of them have their left hand rising. This is so critical to your level of play. Make sure that your left hand, if you're right-handed, is rising as you're striking the ball. But I would actually, if I were you, I would copy the Djokovic turn. I would turn higher than Sinner. I would use gravity-assisted racket speed rather than having to come up with your racket speed with a huge lag that can be hard to time and hard to control. I would have that left hand a little higher and a little more extended out rather than pinning this left arm in against your body. And I would catch the racket as a way to control the racket. You can see that Sinner's just got this big loop of a follow-through to go down. I'm a fan of when pros and amateurs actually catch the racket in their left hand before they actually go back and prepare for the next shot. All right, let me show you the differences in front of the camera. Now I've got the Topspin Pro here. You know what to do. Check out my affiliate link in the description below. It would mean the world to me if you were to use my affiliate link to get one of these for at-home practice. I'll even pin it in the first comment below. So thanks so much. All right, so simple. You've got the semi-western grip, which is the knuckle and heel pad on panel number 4. It's actually the grip that I use on my forehand. So you look at Sinner first. Sinner turns, and his hand is definitely lower than the shoulder. He turns and he points the strings to the back fence with the tip of the racket pointing off to the right. When you do this, it is going to create the situation where you're going to have to flip the racket. And In my experience, when recreational players attempt that type of forehand, we'll call it the Roger Federer forehand as well. When they attempt that forehand, they can do it. They absolutely can do it. But in my experience, rarely do they hit better forehands. Now, you might be the exception, and I'm happy for you. That's awesome. But rarely do they hit better forehands. They can do it, but it's not better than when they do more of the Djokovic style, or definitely like the Andre Agassi style or the Del Potro, where the racket actually goes behind the hand. So be careful about copying this extreme lag. If it works for you and it's better, I'm happy for you. But in my experience, usually it isn't. But he drops down, tip of the racket's pointing off to the right, and then this is where you see this big flip. It's important, if you're going to try this, that you don't flip on purpose. The weight of the racket staying where it is, you turn the hips, so you turn the body, that just pulls the hand forward, and the weight of the racket actually flips behind. Don't do it on purpose. I've helped people learn this, and they tend to try to make it like a manual move, like on purpose. It's not. You've got to be super loose. You drop down and you turn, and that's when the flip occurs. Again, buyer beware. It's not easy to do this. When you make this move, you got to have the strings closed. When he hit the ball, he was swinging out away from his body, spinning the ball. Now, when he was doing this, you saw the left arm go across and then come up. So it was like this. And this hand was pinned up against the body. I'm not a huge fan of players pulling in. Again, I'm talking about recreational players. I'm talking about what you can copy. Be careful doing this. Typically, it produces a very whippy forehand across. And again, you might be able to hit 1 out of 5 perfect forehands, but the other 4 are going to suffer. And then he does very much after he hits the ball, he goes down, back up, and then back to the ready position. I like the Djokovic forehand because it's so much simpler. It's easier for me to do. I'm sure it's easier for Djokovic to do. When he turns higher. His hand is shoulder height. That means he's going to get more gravity-assisted racket speed. Now, he has a slight lag, which you'll call where the racket is slightly to the outside of his hand. But as it drops, it without a doubt goes behind the hand, but it's not so late that it goes behind the hand. It's a little more gradual. It's a little easier for him, and I'm sure it's easier for him to control that than the big lag. What's interesting is the pros tend to gravitate to what works best for them. And what I know is if you use more of the Djokovic style, it's probably going to work best for you as well. So he drops. When he drops, his non-hitting hand stays up. It doesn't drop. It actually rises, and you can see it at contact as he hits and he spins the ball. His non-hitting hand isn't pinned up against his body, but it's actually out like he's waving to the opponent. If you haven't tried that, by the way, if you have not tried just waving to the opponent as you're striking the ball, it can be life-changing for the forehand. And if you're a coach, I would highly recommend that you start adding that to the instruction that you're giving to your students. That when they strike the ball and the ball is touching their strings, they are waving to the opponents. What I've noticed in 25 years of coaching, when players have a low non-hitting hand, their level of play is low. When they have a high non-hitting hand, their level of play is high. Because when you drop this arm, it can become a counterweight and you start hugging yourself. If you've ever been given a lesson, let's say you're the coach and I'm the student, and you see someone hit the ball like this, if you've ever seen them hug themselves, the reason is because their non-hitting arm is dropping. What you want is that non-hitting arm to rise. And we saw Schwartzman do it, Cilic, we saw Djokovic, and we saw Sinner all raising the non-hitting hand as they were striking the ball. And when he was hitting the ball, he was catching the racket. Does Djokovic catch the racket every time? Of course not. Did he catch the racket right there? Absolutely. And probably 300 people on the planet can rally with Djokovic the way Cilic just was in that situation, meaning a very small number of people. I think we lose track a little bit and we lose kind of the reality of how hard they are hitting. One, because it looks so effortless, and two, because they do it so much that we think we hit the ball that way. I know I don't, but I don't hit the ball like Djokovic. But the idea is we want to copy what is easiest for us to replicate. And turning higher, having less lag, not such an extreme lag, but you can drop a little bit on the outside and have a little lag, and that pre-stretches the forehand, just like Vic Braden talked about the pre-stretch forehand. When you turn, have your non-hitting hand visible over your non-hitting shoulder, like you're waving to the opponent, and catch the racket. All right, let me hit a couple forehands. I'm actually going to demonstrate my forehand. I hope that it looks like Novak Djokovic a little bit. You can see the Topspin Pro spinning. Split, I turn, hand same height as the shoulder. As I move my left hand out of the way, I want it to be visible to the camera. And then I'm going to catch the racket in my left hand. What I like to do is see if I can keep the Topspin Pro ball spinning. You can see it spinning. So I'm just going to keep it going. So I'm going for a little bit of a lag. This is the center lag. I actually missed that. So far I've been doing the center. I haven't hit clean contact yet. There was one. So what was that? 1 out of 4. What did I say? 1 out of 5? That's so funny. Get yourself a Topspin Pro so you can practice this, so you can work on your own game. There's snow outside. It was 19 degrees Fahrenheit where I live today. And I get to hit forehands and backhands. I can take off the arm and I can practice pronation on the serve and on the topspin serve. Remember, my affiliate link is in the description below. Work on your game. Look at the pros. Copy what is going to help you play better tennis. And if you do, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.